Hello and welcome back to Grim Tales. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy dark, twisted, grim tales that send chills down your spine, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away, and let's begin. Story 1, ever since my life went downhill, people have been telling me I need help. They say therapy would be good for me. They say I should talk about what happened. They say keeping it all inside will only make me worse. But therapy does not work very well when everyone believes the thing making you sick is only in your head. Talking does not help when the person listening has already decided what is real and what is not. Maybe writing it down will be different. I am stuck in a hospital bed anyway, so I have time. Besides, I could not waste the irony of all this. I used to work here. I used to walk these halls with a badge on my chest, keys in my pocket, and a tired smile on my face. Now I am the one lying in the bed, taking pills, answering questions, and being watched by the same kind of people I used to work beside. Back when I was younger, I was just an aimless teenager. I had no great plan for my life. No clear dream. No big goal. I only knew I needed money, and if I was going to drift through life, I might as well have some cash to spend while doing it. Jobs were hard to find. I applied everywhere I could think of, and most places never called back. The only place that accepted me was a hospital. Strangely enough, it was the biggest hospital in the city, and it was also the same hospital where I had been born. At the time, I thought that was meaningful, like life had brought me full circle. I had entered the world in that place, and now I was going to work there and help other people. It sounds silly now, but I was a teenager. Teenagers are good at turning random events into signs from the universe. The hospital was not in some ancient European city, but the building still looked like something people do not build anymore. It had old stonework, tall windows, narrow corridors, and white walls that never quite looked clean, no matter how many times they were painted. From the outside, it looked like the kind of place vampires would live in if vampires cared about public health. Old, grand, and slightly wrong, but painted bright white to make everyone feel better. At first, I liked the job. I liked having something to do. I liked earning money. I liked learning the building, meeting people, and feeling useful. I even liked helping patients, even when some of them could not really be helped much. That is life, I guess. Sometimes all you can do is make someone a little more comfortable while the world does what it wants with them. The managers seemed to like me too. I showed up on time, did not complain too much, and learned quickly. That was enough for them to start giving me more responsibility. After a while, they even helped pay for my studies so I could become a nurse. They did not get many men interested in that job, especially not men willing to work in the psychiatric wing. So, before I fully understood what I was agreeing to, I was placed there. At first, the work was not too bad. Most of it was simple. Give pills, check rooms, help patients eat, listen to the occasional strange conversation, write things down, repeat. The team working in that wing was older than me, mostly people in their 30s and 40s, but they were kind. They joked a lot, taught me what to do, and helped me settle in. The doctors always told us not to feed into the patient's delusions. They said it was part of the job to stay calm and not agree with things that were not real. But the doctors were not there all day. They came and went, while we stayed with the patients for hours. The nurses and aides working there often ignored that rule, not in a cruel way, more like they had learned something the doctors had not. If a patient said someone invisible was sitting in the corner, one of the older nurses might say, "Well, tell him to sit quietly then." If a patient said they needed to leave before the man in the ceiling found them, someone might say, "He won't bother you while I'm here." At first, I did not understand why they did that. Eventually, I did it too. Every now and then, they would send me on odd errands around the hospital. I thought it was their way of making me learn the building while still doing something useful. Take these papers there. Bring this file here. Ask this person about that. Find these supplies. The hospital was huge, and I got lost often in the beginning. During those errands, I would run into people looking for patients, doctors, offices, or wards I did not know yet. Most of the time, I just pointed them toward the information desk. There was a giant sign that said information desk, but for some reason, people always asked anyone except the people sitting under the sign. Half the time, they did not even go where I directed them. They would just stand there, looking lost and sad, or turn around and walk away. Maybe they did not really want to find the person they were looking for. Maybe they were afraid of what they might see. Hospitals are full of that kind of fear. Since it was such a big hospital, it was never truly quiet. During the day, you could always hear something. Someone crying, someone shouting, machines beeping, stretchers being rushed toward the emergency room, nurses calling for help, families arguing in low voices, elevators opening and closing, footsteps everywhere. It was a place full of life and death, and both of those things are noisy. One day, right after I came back from an errand, the head nurse told me I needed to take some papers up to the 5th floor. No one else wanted to do it. The 5th floor was newer than the rest of the hospital and was mostly used for surgeries. Normally, you had to take a different elevator to reach it. The new guy should take them, one of my coworkers said, grinning. And don't forget to take the stairs. Elevator's broken. He laughed as I walked away. The papers had to be delivered quickly, and I was still new enough that I did what I was told. I figured those lazy bastards just did not want to climb all the way up there. The way to the stairs was through an old corridor that looked almost forgotten. The lights were dimmer there, and the walls had that damp smell old buildings get when the air never fully dries. The stairwell itself looked like it was not used much anymore. There were barriers pushed to the side, faded signs, and the kind of dust that gathers where people rarely walk. I remember thinking it was probably because of mold. Old hospital, old stairs, bad ventilation. Nothing strange about that. Still, when I asked a few people where to find the stairs, some of them looked genuinely surprised that I wanted to use them. On my way up, I passed the 4th floor. The stairs seemed to go on forever. My legs were burning, and I was already annoyed at my coworkers. That was when a well-dressed woman stopped me on the landing. She looked like she had been crying recently, though her makeup was still neat. Her clothes were expensive, and she had the stiff posture of someone trying very hard not to fall apart. She asked me how her father was. I told her I did not work on that floor, and that she should ask the staff there. Before I could even finish, she scoffed. "No one wants to work in this hospital," she said bitterly. Then she went down the stairs. The 4th floor seemed very quiet behind the closed door, so I guessed maybe she was right. When I finally reached the 5th floor, the woman at the desk took the papers from me. I was sweaty, irritated, and ready to begin the long trip back down. Then she looked at me and said, "Did you take the stairs?" "Yeah," I said. Her expression changed. "Don't go back that way," she said. "Take the old service elevator out back. That would have been nice to know on the way up." At the time, the only thought in my head was that my coworkers were even bigger jerks than I thought. They had made me climb all those stairs when there was another elevator I could have used. When I finally got back to the psychiatric wing, no one said a word. Maybe my angry face killed the joke before it could start. "Why didn't you tell me about the service elevator?" I asked. "Were you trying to make me pass out on the way down?" They laughed a little, but not as much as I expected. After that, I did not get sent on many errands for a while. No more stairs. No more strange trips through old corridors. Honestly, I was glad. I was already tired of being stopped in the main hall and asked where everything was when the information desk was right there. Since it was the psychiatric wing, the night shift was usually calm. Most patients were asleep by then, thanks to their medication. We used to joke that the hardest part of the night shift was clocking in. One evening, a patient overheard us joking and said he was going to scare the night nurse just to make her work a little. We all laughed because I was getting his sleeping pills ready at that exact moment. There would be no scare. At least, not from him. When I was getting ready to greet the night shift and go home, I was told I had to stay for an extra shift because one of the night workers had called in sick. Extra money, I thought. The others did not look too eager to stay on short notice, so I agreed. For the first few hours, it really did seem like we had been right about night work. The hardest part was being awake. I had my lunch break. I watched a few fights on my phone. I answered some routine calls. I checked on patients, most of whom were sleeping deeply. I thought maybe I could get used to that shift. Then 2 a.m. came. By then, I was exhausted. I was not used to staying awake that late. Outside the wing, I could faintly hear movement somewhere in the hospital. A cart rolling far away. A voice over an intercom. A door closing. It is a big hospital, after all. Even at night, something is always happening. Inside our wing, though, everything was still. White walls, long corridors, closed doors, a huge clock ticking on the wall. The ticking felt too loud. Each second landed in my head like a tiny hammer. I was so tired that it almost felt like I was the one who had taken the sleeping pills. The wall beside me looked soft somehow, like I could lean into it and disappear. I rested my shoulder against it and let my eyes close for what I told myself was only a long blink. That was when I saw him. The patient who had joked about scaring the night nurse was walking down the hall. He was completely naked except for a blanket draped over one shoulder. I stared at him, still half asleep, and thought, that son of a bitch must have spat out his pills. I called his name. He ignored me. I called again, louder, still nothing. So I walked down the hall after him. He moved strangely, not fast, but not like someone half-drugged either. When I got close enough, I reached out and touched his shoulder. He turned suddenly. Then he shoved me as hard as he could. I fell backward onto the floor, landing hard on my ass. By the time I scrambled up to chase him, he had already turned the corner. I ran after him. When I reached the corner, no one was there. The hallway beyond it was empty. The commotion must have woken a few people. Doors opened. Patients muttered. One of my coworkers came over, confused, and then I saw the same patient standing on the other side of the hall. groggy and barely awake from his medication. He was not naked. He was not running. He was exactly where he should have been. I stood there for a couple of minutes, trying to understand what had just happened. When I told the head nurse, she laughed. "You'll get used to it, honey," she said. I told myself I must have been dreaming. A waking dream. A trick from exhaustion. Something simple. But after that, I knew one thing for certain. For all the good and funny days I had in the psychiatric ward, I did not want to end up on the late-night news as the guy who got brutally murdered by a patient while working in a hospital. So I asked to be transferred to the general ward. On my first day there, I wondered if maybe being brutally murdered was the better choice. The general ward was non-stop work. So many patients, so many needs. Medication, charts, cleaning, calls, families, doctors, emergencies. For the first time, I really saw how weak the human body can be. I saw diseases slowly eat people from the inside while their families stood nearby, helpless and exhausted. It was different from the psychiatric wing. There, despite everything, there had been humor, strange conversations, odd routines. In the general ward, the suffering was quieter and heavier. It sat in the rooms like fog. One day, I was caring for an old woman when she suddenly laughed and told me I had scared her. I apologized. She smiled and said, "I thought you were an angel coming to take me." Now, I am handsome, but I am not that handsome. I joked about it later to one of my coworkers. I thought she would laugh. Instead, she looked sad. "Poor thing," she said. The old woman died the next day. After that, I started paying more attention to the things patients said near the end. We got these predictions from time to time. Nurses know about them. Doctors, too. One example is the surge. That is, when a terminally ill patient suddenly gets one last burst of energy. They start eating again, talking clearly, smiling. Some even get out of bed and walk. Some families know what it means. Some do not. Either way, it is heartbreaking. Other times, patients would say they saw angels, like the old woman had. Or they would say they saw the Grim Reaper coming for them. And about the Grim Reaper, we had our own version of one. He was an old doctor, so old that it felt like he might have been working there when the hospital was built. Maybe that was why he never got fired. Every time he came in to make his rounds, we had an unusually high number of deaths. I do not know if he was trying to free up beds for new customers or if he was just dangerously bad at his job. But I could not understand how no one had caught whatever he was doing. Night shifts in the general ward were usually easier because there was less routine work. But when things went wrong, there were fewer people around to help. When someone dies, a special team usually comes to prepare the body, collect it, and take it to the morgue. There, all deaths are checked and documented. Again, I have no idea how that old doctor never got caught. One busy night, the day shift had not finished preparing a man who had died earlier. So the job fell to me. Preparing a body is not complicated. You clean it. You remove what needs to be removed. You bag it. You make sure everything is labeled properly. But emotionally, it is harder than it sounds. It takes a certain kind of mindset to stop thinking of a person as him and start thinking of him as it. I did not have that mindset yet. Still, it was my job. I could not just leave him there. So I did it. When I took him down to the morgue, there was only one man working there. For a hospital that large, they really loved cutting back on staff. "Busy night, huh?" he asked when he saw me. Reaper came in? Yeah, I said. About that doctor, why, he interrupted me. Thanks for bringing it in. Since I can't leave this place alone, it would have been a while before someone came to get him. I don't like keeping them waiting. Yeah, sure, I said. No problem. It was my first time doing this, though. Hope everything is all right. Don't worry, he said. I'll take him from here. A few days later, a rumor spread through the hospital. People said a man had been declared dead and taken to the morgue. Later, when someone checked the body, they found scratch marks inside the body bag, as if he had woken up and tried to get out. They called it the Lazarus effect. I looked it up. It is rare, but it can happen. A person's heartbeat can return after they are thought to be dead. This was a huge hospital, and people loved gossip. Stories changed every time someone told them. Maybe it was not true. Maybe people were making it up. But I could not stop thinking about the man I had taken down there. I kept thinking about that old doctor declaring him dead. I kept thinking about the drugs, or the mistake, or whatever had happened not being enough to kill him. I kept thinking that maybe I was the one who had put him in the bag. Maybe I had delivered him to the morgue alive. Maybe I had helped him suffocate. I held on to one thought because I needed it. I told myself the morgue worker had done his job better than the old doctor. I told myself he would have noticed if the man was alive. I told myself that again and again. I think I needed therapy even then. I did not want to go back to the psychiatric ward, but I did miss my old coworkers. They were jerks sometimes, but so was I. We saw each other in the break room from time to time. They would tell jokes, talk about the latest strange things patients had done, and mention how some people never seemed able to stay away from that wing for long. That part always made me sad. Mental illness can grab onto people and turn them into permanent fixtures of a place like that. A bed, a room, a chart, a routine. Still, I would think, at least they were alive. Better than dying on the general ward. Nursing is not an easy job, not at a hospital like that. The people who stay long enough are few and far between. There's too much work, too much stress, too much death. Some people bounce from one hospital to another, hoping a fresh start will make the job feel less heavy. After a while, I started thinking about doing the same. Maybe I needed to leave before the place got inside me too deeply. Around my 1-year mark, I overheard some people talking about the new management. Did you hear? One of them said, they're finally gutting the 4th floor. I think they're going to make a memorial there or something. I had not been moving around the hospital much by then. I had learned that being given more responsibility was not really a reward. It just meant more work. So I was out of the loop. I asked why they were getting rid of an entire floor. One of them looked at me strangely. Because of the gas leak, she said. 3 people died there, and a bunch got really sick a while back. Plus, that woman a few years earlier, I stared at her. That made no sense. I had worked there almost a whole year. A whole year. I would have heard about something like that. A gas leak that killed people? An entire hospital floor being closed? I would have seen it on the news, or at least heard gossip about it. And I had seen people there. I was sure of it. Only a few months earlier, when I took the stairs, I passed the 4th floor. I saw that woman. She spoke to me. She asked about her father. I was not crazy. Not yet, anyway. I had to see it for myself. I took the elevator from the ground floor, where I worked. It would not open on the 4th floor, so I went to the 5th. When I stepped out, I saw the receptionist at the desk, the same woman who had taken the papers from me that day. She looked confused when she saw me. She clearly was not expecting me. Then she looked at my face, followed my eyes toward the corridor, and understood what I was thinking. She stood up fast. Don't G, I ran. I bolted down the first set of stairs. When I reached the next landing, I saw her, the well-dressed woman, the one who had asked me about her father. She was lying at the bottom of the stairs. Her body was twisted. Her head was cracked against the wall. Blood had dried around her hair and face. One of her high heels had snapped in half. Her nice clothes were stained and ruined. She had not walked away that day. I had seen her on the stairs because that was where she always ended up. I had no training for that. No tool, no rule. No nurse could tell me how to handle seeing a dead woman who had already been dead for years. I ran back up the stairs as fast as I could. By the time I reached the top, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I felt like I was going to vomit. The receptionist was there, pale and horrified. All I could say was, I don't think those guys are my friends at all. I woke up a few hours later in one of the patient beds. They told me I had been talking nonsense to the 5th floor staff about a dead woman downstairs. They called it burnout. They said I had been under too much stress. Since I also punched someone on my way out and had to be physically restrained, there I was, back in the psychiatric ward. Only now I was on the other side. At least, I thought, maybe I would finally get the therapy everyone kept telling me I needed. It is different being a patient. They want you to talk. They tell you to say everything you need to get off your chest. But at the same time, you can tell when they do not really care. Not in the way you want them to. They care about symptoms, sleep, appetite, medication, behavior, and whether you are a danger to yourself or others. They do not care about the dead woman on the stairs. They do not care about the naked patient who was not really there. They do not care about the old doctor who brings death with him. I remembered the rule from my old job. Do not indulge the patient's delusions. Now, they were not indulging mine. Almost the whole crew in the psychiatric wing had changed. New management had renovated parts of the hospital and replaced a lot of staff. They wanted to move away from the sad, old, creepy look and make things modern. Clean lines, bright lights, new paint, new rules. That meant layoffs, transfers, and new faces everywhere, or so I heard. There was one thing management could not get rid of: the religious side of the hospital. There were statues, names of saints, prayers written on walls, little crosses, old sacred items, and rooms with a history that went back further than anyone wanted to admit. Unless the new management wanted to anger the Catholic Church, every religious person in the city, and maybe God himself, they had to keep those things. That also meant keeping the old tradition of priests and nuns visiting patients. Usually, they visited critical cases: children with bad pneumonia, old people close to death, patients whose families asked for prayers. When medicine was not enough, people tried anything that might help. One day, I got a visit from an old priest. He had prayed for me when I was a child, when I was hospitalized with pneumonia more than 10 years earlier. I remembered him, even though I had been very young. His face had stayed in my mind for some reason. This time, we actually had a conversation. "How are you doing?" he asked. "I'm fine, Father. I said. And you? As well as God allows me. That's good to hear. I'm glad to see you survived back then, he said, although I am sad to see you back here. I am sure you will pull through just as you did once before. Thank you for your kind words, Father, I said. I hope you are right. I'll keep you in my prayers, son. It is funny how some things stay with you. I had been so young the first time I saw him, but I still remembered his face clearly, and he looked exactly the same. Not older, not even a little. I guess not even death can keep a man of God from his duties. I've been here for a while now because my mind is apparently still not in the right place. Even if they do not believe everything I say, they believe enough of it to keep me here. Some of the medication helps a little. It makes me calmer. It makes the days softer around the edges. It makes me sleep. The doctors come in with the usual questions. Are you sleeping well? Are you eating? Are you taking your medication on time? As if I have any choice. But one question stuck with me. Are you still hearing voices? The doctor asked. I've never heard things that weren't there, I said. He looked down at his notes. The night crew told me you keep talking to yourself sometimes. No, I said. I only talk to the 5 night shift workers when the noise outside keeps me from sleeping. No extra voices in my head. The doctor looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, there are only 4 workers at night. I did not answer right away. I just looked past him, toward the hallway outside my room. The hospital was quiet for once. Too quiet. And somewhere beyond the door, someone I had not met yet began to laugh softly. So, I suppose I am still learning things about this place. Story 2. At least, that is how I had always felt. For as long as I can remember, there was always a distance between me and everyone else. It was not the kind of distance you could measure by steps or miles. It was worse than that. It was the kind of distance that stayed even when I was standing right beside someone. People lived around me, but I was never really living with them. They smiled. They went out together. They made plans. They fell in love. They got married. They started families. They built lives out of little ordinary moments, and somehow those moments always seemed to happen without me. I watched people grow into the world like they belonged in it. I never did. I cannot even remember the last time I had a good night's sleep. Maybe I never had one. Maybe sleep was always something other people got to enjoy, while I only lay there, trapped in my own head, listening to my thoughts run in circles. It is strange how loneliness feeds itself. You start to believe you are an outsider, and soon enough, everyone treats you like one. Or maybe they treat you like one first, and your mind simply learns the shape of it. Either way, it becomes the same thing. You stand outside long enough, and eventually the door no longer feels like something you are meant to open. I once heard that talking about your problems helps. People say things like that all the time. Talk to someone. Open up. Let it out. Do not keep it inside. If that were true, I should have been the happiest man alive, because I talked constantly, mostly to myself. I talked while walking down the street. I talked while sitting by the water. I talked in empty rooms and quiet corners. I talked because silence felt worse. When no one else answers you for long enough, you begin to answer yourself. It is not the same, of course. It does not cure anything. It does not make you feel heard. But it fills the air for a little while, and sometimes that is better than nothing. Never having friends does something to a person. Not even close friends. Not even casual ones. Not even someone who nods at you with recognition when you pass them. After a while, you start to think there must be something wrong with you. Not something small, either. Something deep. Something built into your bones. But if the wrongness has been there for as long as you can remember, is it really wrong? Or is it just what you are? That was the question that followed me most of my life. I could never answer it. I wanted to ask someone else, but asking would mean hearing the truth. Maybe the truth was worse than not knowing. Maybe it was better to carry the question forever than to hear someone say, yes, there is something wrong with you, and everyone can see it. So I kept it to myself. My life did not change much over the years. I got a job because everyone got a job. I worked where people worked. I went where people went. I did the things people are supposed to do, but it all felt empty, meaningless, like I was acting in a play where everyone else had been given the script, and I was standing on stage trying to guess my lines. Money never meant much to me, neither did possessions. Some people collect things to prove they are alive. Houses, cars, watches, furniture, clothes, little objects that tell the world what kind of person they want to be. I never cared for any of it. All I had were the clothes on my body, and most days that felt like enough. Maybe too much. I spent a lot of time walking around the city. I watched it change in ways that made me feel even more out of place. Buildings went up. Old shops vanished. Streets became busier, then cleaner, then stranger. People dressed differently, spoke differently, carried new things in their hands. They moved faster every year, always chasing something just ahead of them. It was odd to watch, but not surprising. People like to push things forward. I always heard that being in nature was good for a person's mind, so I started going to the beach more often than anywhere else. The beach did not change as much as the city. The water came in. The water went out. The sand shifted, but it was still sand. The sky opened wide above everything, and the wind did not care who you were. Still, even there, the feeling stayed. That feeling of being apart. Nights were better than days. At night, fewer people noticed you, or failed to notice you. The beach was darker, calmer, and less demanding. I could walk along the edge of the water and listen to the waves without having to pretend I belonged. If being in nature truly helped, I suppose someone else would have to say it, because it would not be my voice people listened to. If I even had a voice at all by then. The one thought that made me feel a little better was that I still had my mother. At least I had always thought I did. I hoped she understood what I was going through. She had been with me through all of it. She knew me before anyone else did. She had seen me as a child, as a boy, as someone who still had a chance to become something better. She had always been there for me, even when I could not explain what was wrong. But over time, she started going out less. At first, I told myself she was just getting older. That happens. People slow down. They stay home more. They become tired. But part of me wondered if my sadness had infected her too. I visited her often, maybe too often. I came with all my heavy thoughts, all my pain, all my loneliness, and I placed it at her feet without meaning to. Maybe it made her worse. Maybe I should have stopped visiting her. But she was my mother, and when you have no one else, even guilt can feel like company. In the beginning, I fought hard against being alone. I really did. I did not simply accept it. I went out. I tried. I forced myself into the world and acted like I could become part of it if I stood in the right places long enough. Feeling normal became more important than actually being normal. I went to local fairs whenever they came to town. I liked the lights, the music, the smell of food, the sound of people laughing. I never bought much. Sometimes I thought about buying something small, but I never seemed to know where my change went. I must have left it with my mother. That was the only explanation I could think of. So I just walked around. I looked at the booths. I watched children beg their parents for prizes. I stood near groups of people and pretended for a moment that I was with them. No one seemed to notice, or if they did not care. Maybe that was the point of those places. Everyone was too busy enjoying themselves to worry about a lonely man standing nearby. Once, I even crashed a wedding. I did not mean any harm by it. I just saw the people gathering, all dressed up and smiling, and I felt drawn to them. Weddings always seemed strange to me, the clothes especially. Some of the dresses were odd, stiff and white and bright, like the people wearing them had stepped out of another world. But if they liked them, that was fine. People should be allowed to enjoy the things that make them happy. After the ceremony, there was a huge party. People danced, drank, laughed, hugged, and cried. They did all the things people are supposed to do when something beautiful happens. I stayed near the edge of it, watching with a strange ache in my chest. I liked that wedding more than most gatherings because someone actually spoke to me. The man who had conducted the ceremony came over. He was kind, or at least he seemed kind. It had been so long since anyone had started a conversation with me that my voice barely came out at first. He asked how I was doing. He asked if I planned to stay. Then he asked if I would ever like to visit his church. I had heard that religious people were always trying to convert others, so I was careful. Maybe, I told him. He smiled and said I should stay a little longer, talk to more people if I could. I thanked him, and I meant it. But by then, it felt like too much. One conversation had already taken more from me than I expected, so I left before anyone else could notice me, or worse, before no one did. Museums were different. I liked museums because they did not ask anything from me. You could stand still there. You could be quiet. You could look at the past without having to explain yourself. The museums in my city always seemed to have a new exhibition whenever I returned. I never understood how they changed so quickly. One time it was paintings. Another time it was old machines. Another time it was clothing from people who had lived long before. That was probably why the staff never stayed long. Imagine being some young worker looking for easy money, only to have to learn a whole new exhibition every time one came in. I felt bad for them, so I made their lives easier and kept to myself. Mostly, I liked looking at the exhibits. And yes, I liked judging the strange ones, too. People in old paintings dressed much better than people do now. Their clothes had shape, style, and dignity. Today, clothes are strange, less elegant, less careful. But I suppose that is the whole point of fashion. People do not want to look the same as they did last month. They want change. They want to be new all the time. I was not like that. I kept the clothes I liked. I saw no reason to change. The cinema was another place I visited from time to time. People loved movies. They always had. But it seemed to become even more popular as the years went on. The cinema gave me another chance to blend in, or at least pretend to. Most people came with friends, some came with dates, some came with family. I came alone, bought my ticket, and sat near the front where there were fewer people around me, but still enough to make me feel part of the crowd. The stories on the screen rarely made sense to me anymore. The way people spoke, the way they behaved, the kind of things they cared about, It all felt distant. I was not there for the stories anyway. I was there for the darkness, the noise, and the feeling of sitting among people without having to speak. The actors' names also became harder and harder to pronounce. My God, where did they even come from? Somewhere that treated people like me a little better, I hoped. One place I avoided was funerals. I did not like funerals. They were too sad, too heavy, too honest. At fairs and weddings, people could pretend life was brighter than it was. At museums and cinemas, people could look at other worlds. But funerals made everyone face the same truth. Someone had gone, and the people left behind had to carry the empty space. I respected grief too much to walk into it without being invited. I hoped that one day, when I was gone, there would be someone who cared enough to cry for me. Not forever. Not in a way that ruined them. Just a little. A few tears would be enough. After that, I would want them to be happy again. I am not completely unreasonable. But as the years passed, every day started to feel like it might be the last day. Not because anything dramatic happened. That would almost have been easier. No, it was the slow kind of ending. The kind where you wake up and realize you cannot carry yourself much farther. A man can only survive on willpower for so long. Eventually, even that dries up. I did not want to place that burden on anyone, especially not my mother. But who else was there? Who else would listen to my sorrow? So I decided to visit her. The walk to her home felt longer than usual. Every step was heavy because I knew what kind of conversation we were going to have. I knew it would hurt her. That was the worst part. She was a good woman. She had done what she could. If I had failed at living, that was not her fault. It was mine. Still, I could not see another choice anymore. Her home was quiet when I arrived. It always had a sadness to it, but that day it felt deeper. Maybe I carried that feeling with me. Maybe the house knew why I had come. I found her in the place she usually sat, looking older than I wanted her to look. She looked at me the same way she always did, happy to see me, sad that nothing had changed. It had been a while since I had visited her. I felt guilty for that too. We talked for a bit about her life and how she had been feeling. My younger brother was taking good care of her. He always had more to give than I did. He understood that I could not offer much help anymore. His health had been getting worse, though. I know it is an awful thing to think, but at least she would probably be gone before him. That is the normal course of life. A parent should not have to bury a child. A mother should not have to watch one son fade away after already losing so much. Even thinking that felt cruel. But life is cruel, whether we admit it or not. For a while, we spoke around the real reason I had come. That is what people do when a painful truth is sitting between them. They talk about weather, food, health, neighbors, anything else. But eventually, silence filled the room, and there was nowhere left to hide. So I told her plainly. I told her I could not take it anymore. I told her I had spent my whole life on the outside, watching people live while I remained apart. I told her I was tired of being unseen, unheard, and untouched by the world. I told her I had tried fairs, weddings, beaches, museums, cinemas, work, and all the normal places where people are supposed to find meaning. None of it had worked. I told her I did not want to keep doing this. She took it quietly at first. Her face did not change much, but her eyes did. They filled with a pain so old and deep that I almost stopped speaking. She reached for me, or maybe she only wished she could. She told me she loved me. She said she understood why I felt this way. She did not call me selfish. She did not tell me I was weak. She did not pretend that everything was fine. All she did was plead. Her voice shook when she said it. "I can't bear to see you die a second time, son," the words hung in the room. For a moment, I did not understand them. Then everything inside me became still. A second time. I looked at her face, really looked at it. I saw the years there, more years than I remembered. I saw how old she had become. I saw how tired. I thought about my younger brother taking care of her because I could not help anymore. I thought about the city changing too quickly. The clothes, the exhibitions, the actors with names I did not recognize, the fairs where no one saw me, the money I never seemed to have, the sleep I never got, the funerals I avoided. I thought about how people never acknowledged me, not because they hated me, not because I was strange, because they could not see me at all. My mother was still looking at me with tears in her eyes. And suddenly, I remembered. Not all of it. Not clearly. Memory came like light through dirty glass. A high place, a railing, the night air, the city below me, the weight in my chest, the belief that one step would end the loneliness forever. One step down. That was why every day began the same way. That was why I never slept. That was why I wandered and never truly arrived anywhere. That was why nothing changed, even as everything changed around me. I had already died. And somehow, even death had left me outside. Story 3. I probably use YouTube more than any other app on my phone or laptop. Some people watch Netflix every night. Some people scroll TikTok until their eyes hurt. Some people put on music and stare at the ceiling. For me, it has always been YouTube. It became part of my daily routine without me even noticing. By the time I get home from school, my brain is usually tired. My shoulders hurt from my backpack, and I feel like I have spent the whole day pretending to be more awake and more normal than I really am. So when I finally get home, I give myself a small reward. I go to my room. I change into pajamas. I grab whatever snacks I can find, usually popcorn, chips, or something sweet. I take a soda from the fridge if my mom has not already hidden them from me. Then I close my bedroom door, lock it, turn off the lights, and crawl into bed with my laptop. That is my little world. For a few hours, I do not have to think about homework, school, people, grades, or the future. I can just disappear into long commentary videos, strange internet mysteries, niche documentaries, true crime discussions, film essays, and those oddly specific videos about abandoned places or lost media that somehow keep you watching for 2 hours. It is not exciting, but it is mine. That was exactly what I was doing tonight. Nothing strange had happened during the day. School had been normal. Annoying, but normal. A teacher gave us too much homework. A girl in my class whispered something about me and laughed when I looked over. The cafeteria food was terrible. It rained for about 20 minutes in the afternoon and made the whole school smell like wet concrete and old books. By the time I got home, I was ready to shut the whole world out. My mom was in the living room watching one of her shows. She asked if I had eaten, and I lied and said yes. She told me not to stay up too late. I promised I would not, even though we both knew that was not true. Then I went into my room. I changed into my red pajamas, the soft ones with the sleeves that were a little too long. I made popcorn in the microwave, poured it into a bowl, and brought a can of soda with me. I locked my bedroom door, not because I felt unsafe, but because I liked privacy. I hated when my mom came in without knocking, especially if I was in the middle of watching something weird. My room was small but comfortable. My bed was pushed against the wall, my desk was covered in school papers, and the only light came from my laptop screen. Outside my window, the street was quiet. A few houses had porch lights on. The air conditioner hummed softly from the corner. Everything felt ordinary. I climbed into bed, pulled the blanket over my legs, set the popcorn bowl beside me, and opened YouTube. At first, I could not find anything worth watching. That happens sometimes. You know the feeling. You want to watch something, but nothing feels right. Every thumbnail looks boring. Every title feels too dramatic or too fake. You scroll past 10 videos, then 20, then 50, and somehow the choices make you feel even more bored than before. I passed a documentary about a missing theme park, a drama commentary video, a movie review, a video about strange radio signals, a 4-hour iceberg video that I might have watched on another night, but not tonight. I kept scrolling, sipping my soda, eating popcorn one piece at a time. Then I saw the thumbnail. My hand stopped on the trackpad. At first, my brain did not understand what I was seeing. It was a video thumbnail with a close-up of a face. The image was dark and grainy, lit mostly by the bluish glow of a laptop screen. The person in the picture had pale skin, messy hair, and bloodshot eyes. Their mouth was slightly open. Their expression was empty, almost lifeless, like they had stared at something horrible for so long that they had forgotten how to react. The person was me, not someone who looked like me. Me, I stared at the screen, waiting for my mind to find the trick. Maybe it was some influencer with the same hair. Maybe it was a random person who had a similar face. Maybe it was an AI-generated thumbnail based on browsing data, though even as I thought that, I knew it made no sense. I do not upload videos. I barely post pictures. I am not a content creator. I am not popular online. My accounts are private. I do not do trends. I do not make clips. I do not even like being photographed unless I have control over the angle. And yet, there I was, staring at myself from a YouTube thumbnail. The title was a string of strange words and numbers. It did not look like a normal video title. It looked like someone had mashed a keyboard and added my first name in the middle. The channel name was blank at first, or maybe my eyes refused to focus on it. The view count said 0. The upload time said just now. I felt a hard lump form in my throat. A normal person might have shut the laptop. A smarter person might have called their mother. But fear and curiosity can feel almost the same when they hit at the same time. My hand moved before I fully decided what to do. I clicked. The screen went black. For a moment, the little buffering circle spun in the center. I stared at it, holding my breath. My bedroom suddenly felt too quiet. The air conditioner hummed. Somewhere outside, a car passed slowly down the street. The popcorn beside me smelled buttery and warm, but the smell made my stomach turn. Then the video began. It showed my bedroom. The camera angle was strange, placed near the foot of my bed, pointed slightly upward. But there was no camera there. I knew there was no camera there. I looked toward the spot where it should have been, but I saw only the edge of my dresser and a pile of clothes on the floor. On the screen, I was lying in bed. I had the same bowl of popcorn beside me. I was wearing the same red pajamas. My laptop was resting in my lap. For a few seconds, I could not move at all. It was not just a video of someone who looked like me. It was my room, my blanket, my pajamas, my laptop, the soda can on my nightstand. Even the small crack in the wall near my desk was there, visible behind me in the dark. But the version of me in the video was not relaxed. She was terrified. Her eyes were wide and wet. Tears streamed down her face. Her mouth hung open as she screamed at someone off camera. She looked like a child begging a nightmare to stop. Her whole body shook so violently that the laptop nearly slid off her lap. I felt a cold wave move through my body. I looked around my room again, fast this time. Nothing. No one. My door was locked. My window was shut. My closet door was half open like usual, but I could see the clothes hanging inside. There was no one standing in the corner. No one under the desk. No one at the foot of the bed. Still, the video kept playing. The camera in the video shook slightly as someone approached me. The person was behind the recording at first, but then he stepped into view. He was dressed entirely in black. Black hoodie, black pants, black gloves, black shoes. His face was covered by one of those strange human masks, the kind that are almost normal but not quite. The kind people wear in horror movies when they want to look like a person, but not be a person. The mask had smooth skin, hollow eyes, and a tiny frozen smile that made my stomach twist. It reminded me of those masks from The Purge, or something someone would buy online and think was funny until they saw it in a dark room. In one hand, he held a kitchen knife. There was blood on it. Not a lot at first. Just enough to make the blade look dark and wet in the light from the laptop. The man stood beside the bed, staring down at the other me. His head tilted slowly, like he was studying her fear. Then he reached out and struck her. I flinched so hard in my real bed that my knee hit the underside of my laptop. On the screen, the other me screamed. The man hit her again and again. I heard every sound through my laptop speakers. The dull impact of his fists, the sharp cry that came out of my own mouth, the creak of the bed frame, the bowl of popcorn tipping over and spilling across the blanket. I told myself it was fake. It had to be fake. Deepfake technology was everywhere now. People could make celebrities say things they never said. They could put anyone's face on someone else's body. Maybe someone at school hated me. Maybe someone had taken my pictures and made something horrible to scare me. Maybe this was a prank. A cruel one, but still only a prank. But the sounds were too real. The room was too exact. The fear on my face did not look acted. The man kept attacking the version of me in the video until she could barely move. Blood ran from her nose. Her lips split. One of her teeth fell onto the blanket. Her hands lifted weakly, trying to protect her face, but he grabbed them and forced them down. I wanted to close the laptop. I wanted to throw it across the room, but my hands would not obey me. I watched. The man stopped for a moment, breathing hard behind the mask. His shoulders rose and fell. He seemed almost pleased, like he had finished the first part of some performance. Then he lifted the knife. The other me shook her head. I heard myself sobbing through the speakers. No, the girl in the video whispered. Please, please, don't. The masked man did not answer. He moved to the end of the bed. What followed was so awful that my mind kept trying to separate from it. He started hurting her slowly, methodically, as if he wanted to take her apart, piece by piece. He cut into her toes while she kicked weakly and cried until her voice cracked. Then he moved to her hands. Her fingers bent in ways they should not bend. The knife flashed again and again in the blue light. I pressed my hand over my mouth. Tears blurred my real eyes. The other me was still alive, but barely. Her screams had become thin, broken sounds. Each one was weaker than the last. The masked man leaned close to her face. He seemed to whisper something, but the audio did not catch it. Then he took both of her ears. He held them beside his own masked head like he was trying them on, like some sick joke only he understood. That was when I finally managed to move. I slammed the spacebar to pause the video. The screen froze on the masked man standing over me, his head tilted, my blood on his gloves. My whole room was silent. I could hear myself breathing. I could hear my heart. I could hear the faint hum of the house around me. I grabbed my phone from the bed and opened my messages. My fingers shook so badly that I mistyped my passcode twice. I wanted to text my mom. I wanted to text anyone. But what would I even say? There is a video of me being murdered in my bedroom. That sounded insane. I looked at the door, still locked. I looked at the window, still closed. Then I looked back at the laptop. The video was no longer paused. I had not touched it. It continued. The masked man had moved back to the center of the bed. The other me lay broken and still, barely breathing. He pressed one gloved finger against her swollen lips, as if telling her to be quiet. Then he placed the knife against her stomach and slowly pushed it in. The other me made one final sound. Not a scream. Something smaller. Something tired. When he was done, he stood over the body and stared down at his work. Then he lifted both hands and placed his fingers together in a rectangle, like he was framing a camera shot. He looked through his own fingers, admiring the scene. It was such a childish gesture, so strange and casual, that it made everything worse. Then his head moved, slowly, too slowly. He rolled it over his shoulder and turned toward the camera, toward me. The blank eyes of the mask faced the lens. The man walked closer, the image filled with his face. Then his hand covered the camera, and the screen went black. A replay button appeared in the center. For a long moment, I just stared. My mind kept reaching for the deepfake explanation again. It was the only thing that let me breathe. Someone had made this. Someone had used my photos, copied my room somehow, maybe from old pictures, maybe from a video call, maybe from something I had forgotten. It was sick, but it was digital. It was online. It was not real. Then I heard my mother scream. It came from the living room. The sound tore through the house so suddenly that I dropped my phone. "Mom?" I shouted. The scream cut off. For half a second, there was silence. Then it changed into a wet, bubbling gurgle. My blood turned to ice. I slid off the bed so fast that the laptop nearly fell. My legs were weak. My head felt light. I stared at my locked bedroom door, waiting for my mother to call back, waiting for her to say she had dropped something, waiting for any normal sound. Nothing came. Then I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, coming down the hallway. Step, 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 they did not rush. That was the worst part. Whoever was walking toward my room was not afraid of being caught. He was not trying to be quiet either. Each footstep pressed into the floorboards with calm weight. I backed away from the door. My heel hit the side of the bed. The footsteps stopped right outside. I could see the thin line of darkness under the door. No shadow moved there at first. Then, something blocked the hallway light. Someone was standing on the other side. I covered my mouth with both hands. A sharp scraping sound dragged against the wood, slowly from top to bottom. A knife. The sound entered my chest like a hook. The doorknob rattled, once then again. The lock held. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the man outside the door began to knock. Not hard. Not at first. 3 soft taps. Tap, 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 like a visitor trying to be polite. My eyes filled with tears. I could not speak. I could not even whisper. My phone was on the floor near the bed, but I was too scared to move toward it. My laptop screen still glowed behind me, showing the black end screen of the video and the replay button. The doorknob rattled again, harder this time. Then something slammed into the door. The whole frame shook. I screamed and stumbled backward. Another slam. The wood cracked slightly near the lock. I grabbed my desk chair and dragged it toward the door, but my hands were slippery with sweat. The chair legs scraped across the floor, loud and useless. I wedged it under the knob like I had seen people do in movies, though I knew it would not hold for long. The man hit the door again. The chair jumped. The lock gave a small metallic groan. I ran back to my bed and grabbed my phone. The screen was cracked from where I had dropped it, but it still worked. I tried to dial emergency services. My fingers kept missing the numbers. The call screen opened, then closed, then opened again. Another slam. A larger crack appeared in the door. I finally got the call started. No signal. That did not make sense. I had Wi-Fi. I had service in my room every night. But the phone showed nothing. No bars, no connection. Like my room had been cut away from the rest of the world. The man outside stopped hitting the door. For a moment, I heard only his breathing. Then, my laptop made a sound. I turned slowly. The video had restarted on its own. On the screen, I was lying in bed again, in the same red pajamas, with a popcorn beside me. The angle was the same, the room the same, but this time, something was different. The version of me in the video was not looking off screen at the masked man. She was looking directly at the camera, directly at me. Her face was bruised. Her eyes were swollen and full of tears. Her mouth moved. At first, no sound came out. Then the audio crackled. My own voice whispered through the laptop speakers. "Don't open the door." The handle rattled again. I spun back around. The masked man outside began laughing. It was quiet at first, muffled by the wood. Then it grew louder. Not wild laughter, not angry laughter. A soft, pleased laugh, like someone enjoying a private joke. The knife scratched against the door again. This time, it moved slowly in the shape of something. A circle, then a line, then another line. I do not know what he is carving. I do not want to know. I am writing this now because I do not know what else to do. Maybe someone will see it. Maybe it will upload somehow if the signal comes back. Maybe this will become a record, the same way that horrible video became a warning. Maybe the video was not a prank. Maybe it was not made by someone else. Maybe it was sent to me from a few minutes in the future. Maybe I was watching what is about to happen. The man has started throwing himself against the door again. With each hit, the wood bends more. The chair is slipping. The lock is cracking. My mother is silent. The replay button is gone now. The video is playing live, I think. I can see myself on the screen, sitting on the bed, typing with shaking hands. Behind the video version of me, the door is breaking in slow, sharp pieces. The same thing is happening behind me. I can hear it. I can feel it. The door just split near the handle. A black-gloved hand pushed through the crack for a second before pulling back. He knows I saw it. He is laughing again. I do not know how much longer the lock can take, and if the video is right, I already know what happens when the door opens. Story 4. When I was 8 years old, I saw something I was never supposed to see. I did not go looking for it on purpose. Not really. I was only a curious kid, and kids always want to know why they are being left out. That was all it was in the beginning. I wanted to understand why my elementary school had something called video time every Friday afternoon, and why almost everyone was allowed to go except me. It was strange from the start. Every Friday, just before the end of the school day, a select group of students would be taken away to watch something. That was what the teachers called it, at least. Video time. The whole 5th grade class got to go, and so did almost everyone in my class. Everyone except me. At first, I did not think too deeply about it. I assumed it was a reward. Maybe the kids who behaved well got to watch movies, while the rest of us were sent outside for another recess. That would have made sense. Except for one problem. Elliot Marsh was allowed to go. Elliot Marsh was not a good kid. He was not even close. He could never sit still in class. He talked while the teacher was talking. He pulled girls' pigtails until they cried. He spat in other kids' faces and laughed when they got upset. Sometimes he talked back to teachers with this ugly little grin, like he knew they could not really do anything to him. I was nothing like Elliot. I was quiet. I kept my head down. I spoke only when someone asked me a question. I did not pull hair or spit or start fights. I was not perfect. I messed up my spelling sometimes, and math made my head hurt, but I was not bad. So why did Elliot get video time while I had to stay outside? That question bothered me more than I wanted to admit. The room itself bothered me too. It was not a normal classroom. It was a small room near the back hall, one I had barely noticed before video time started. I only managed to look inside once, just for a second, but that was enough to make me dislike it. The room had red lights, not warm red like Christmas lights or a soft lamp. Harsh red, heavy red, the kind of red that made everything look wrong. The carpet was red too, or maybe it only looked that way because of the lights. I remember thinking I would hate sitting on that floor. I could imagine the red glow falling over everyone's faces while they stared at a screen, and something about it made my stomach twist. One Friday, I stepped forward to get a better look. Before I could reach the door, a warm hand wrapped around my arm and gently pulled me back. Frida, Mrs., Parrish said, smiling in that way teachers smile when they already know you are lying. Aren't you supposed to be at recess? I told her I was supposed to be in the room too. It was a bad lie, and she knew it right away. She did not get angry. She only sighed and guided me toward the doors that led outside. She told me to go play with the other children who were not part of video time. But there were only 4 of them, and I did not even know their names. They stood together in a strange, quiet little group, staring at the playground like they did not understand what it was for. Then, I saw my 2 younger brothers in the line. They were walking with the other kids toward the video room. That made me angry in a way I could not explain. My brothers were younger than me. I thought older kids were supposed to get special things first. I thought being older meant something. But there they were, following the long line of students into the red room while I was sent outside like I had done something wrong. I watched them go in, and jealousy burned in my chest. Why was I different? Was I bad without knowing it? Did the teachers not like me? Was there something wrong with me that everyone knew except me? I tried to tell myself it did not matter. I had a second recess. Most kids would be happy about that. But I did not want recess. I wanted to know what they were watching. I wanted to know why everyone else had been chosen, even Elliot Marsh, while I was left out. The next day, I asked my friends about it. They came into class smiling the way they always did, and I cornered them before the bell. I asked what the big secret was. I asked what movies they watched. I asked why they were not allowed to tell me. They only smiled and pretended to zip their lips. That made it worse. When I got home, I asked my mom to talk to the school. I told her it was unfair that everyone else got video time and I did not. I expected her to be on my side. Mom had always been honest with me, and I trusted her more than anyone, but she only shook her head and sighed. "Some things aren't for you, Frida," she said. That hurt more than I expected. I knew I could not have everything I wanted. I was not a spoiled kid. But there was something about the way she said it that made me feel small, like I had asked for something I had no right to want. Like video time was not just a school activity, but a door, and everyone else was allowed through it except me. My mother was not cruel. I need you to understand that. At least, I did not think she was. I admired her when I was young because she told the truth. When I was 5, I found an old photograph in the attic. It showed a baby who looked like me being held by a woman I did not know. I brought it to Mom, and she did not lie. She did not pretend or make up some soft story. She told me I was adopted. It was not exactly a secret. Anyone could see I did not look like the rest of my family. My mother had blood-red hair and pale skin, and both of my younger brothers had inherited the same bright hair. I was a mousy brunette with softer features and darker eyes. Mom told me that being adopted did not mean I was loved any less. She said I could ask about my birth mother whenever I wanted. She said that when I was older, I could write letters to her and maybe even visit her if I wanted to. That made me feel safe. It made me feel like I could have 2 mothers, and both could love me in different ways. But when it came to video time, she would not help me. She kept asking me one question. Why do you want to go so badly? I did not have a good answer. At first, I thought I wanted to watch movies. Then I realized I did not even know if they were watching movies. I wanted to join because everyone else was allowed, and I was not. I wanted to know why the door was closed to me. I wanted to stop feeling like I was less than the other kids. The strangest thing was that the other children did not even act excited about video time. They did not brag about it. They did not talk about the movies or shows they watched. Some of them acted like they forgot it happened at all. When I asked if they had fun watching movies, they blinked at me like I had said something strange. "What movies?" one girl asked before walking away. That confused me. I asked my brothers at dinner. I wanted to know what they watched in the red room every Friday. Both of them looked at me like I was being weird. Before either of them could answer, Mom changed the subject. She did that often. Every time I tried to press them about video time, She suddenly wanted to talk about schoolwork or vegetables or something that had nothing to do with the question. But one day, I got Cam alone. Cam was the quieter of my two brothers. Pidgey was loud and always running around, but Cam usually kept to himself, especially when he had his Nintendo Ds. He loved Pokemon more than anything at that age. If he had that game in his hands, the world could have ended around him and he probably would not have noticed. We were sitting in the car while Mom was inside getting groceries. Pidgey was at a friend's house, so it was just me and Cam in the back seat. I knew it was my chance. "You guys watch movies in that red room, right?" I asked, leaning over and poking his cheek. "What do you watch?" Cam did not look up from his game. "They're not movies, stupid head," he muttered with his stylus in his mouth. That caught my attention. I reached over and took the Ds from his hands. "Hey!" he shouted. "What do you mean they're not movies? Give it back." Cam reached for it, almost choking on the stylus he had been chewing. I pulled the game away and slipped it into the pocket of my skirt, which was my best hiding place. "I'm going to lose my Squirtle. Tell me what you watch in that weird room." He glared at me, his eyes still unfocused from staring at the screen for so long. "What are you talking about? I want to know what video time is." I smiled because I enjoyed annoying him. I liked watching his face turn almost as red as his hair when he got mad. Cam spat at me. "If you don't tell me," I said, "I'll throw your game out the window." That was a lie, of course. I would never have actually done it. But Cam did not know that, and I held my ground even when he threatened to call for Mom. We both knew Mom was in the store. We both also knew that if we started fighting, neither of us would get the peanut butter ice cream we had been promised. I had won, but only just. Cam held out his hand. "Give me my game back, and I'll tell you." "No, I'll give you 5 seconds." "You can't time it." "Yes, I can." He wiggled his fingers. "Give it back, or I'll tell PJ you've been hiding his favorite cereal under your pillow." I had no idea he knew about that. Cam was sneakier than I thought. I gave him the Ds back. "Well?" I asked. Cam opened the game and checked his progress before answering. "It's not movies," he said. "It's a tutorial." "A tutorial?" "Yeah," he waved the Ds slightly, like in a game. I frowned. "So, it teaches you how to do something?" "Yep." I leaned back against the seat and watched a raindrop slide down the car window. "What is it teaching you?" Cam did not answer. He was already lost in his game again. At the time, I did not think I wanted to know. My anger had faded, and my curiosity had turned into something colder. A tutorial sounded less fun than a movie. It sounded boring, and for a little while I stopped caring so much about video time. I even began to enjoy my extra recess. I would sit on top of the jungle gym and pretend I was a queen ruling over my subjects. My subjects were the 4 other kids who were also left outside, though they never wanted to play with me. They did not do much of anything. They sat in the grass, picked their noses, and stared up at the sky like there was a giant question mark hanging over them. They barely spoke. When they did, it was mostly sounds, little grunts, snorts, noises that did not seem to mean anything. I got tired of them pretty quickly. One Friday, it started raining during recess. At first, it was only a few fat drops, but then the sky opened. The other 4 kids did not react. One girl even tipped her head back and let rain hit her face without blinking. I ran for the school doors. Normally, we had to ask a teacher before going inside during recess, but I was getting soaked. I reached the doors and pulled. Locked. I tried another entrance. Also locked. By then, my clothes were wet, and my hair was sticking to my face. I ran around the side of the building and found a door near the auditorium. That one opened. I stepped inside, dripping water onto the floor. My plan was simple. I would cut through the auditorium, go back to my classroom, and maybe pretend I had been sent in by a teacher. But as soon as I left the auditorium, I knew something was wrong. The hallway lights were off. The school did not look like a school anymore. The familiar hallway had become a long, dark tunnel. The walls, lockers, and classroom doors all seemed to melt together into shadow. The air felt colder than it should have been. There was only one light. A red glow spilled from the video room. The door was open. I stood there, frozen. Part of me wanted to turn around and go back into the rain. But another part of me, the part that had been wondering for weeks, began to move forward. I had waited so long to see what I was not allowed to see. I had been left out, lied to, and told some things were not for me. Now, the door was open. My steps quickened. My breath grew heavy in my throat. The red light became brighter, spreading across the floor like blood. I reached the doorway. I do not remember what I saw inside. That is the worst part. I only remember stumbling backward with a scream stuck in my throat. Then the scream came out, and once it started, I could not stop. I screamed until teachers came. I screamed until someone called my mother. I screamed even after she arrived, and when she tried to touch me, I pulled away. I was on the floor, sobbing into the carpet fibers, clinging to them like they could protect me. I told my mother there was a monster in that room. I told her there was a monster that did not want me to know it existed. She said I was being ridiculous. I begged her to take me back to the video room. I needed her to see it. I needed someone to see it so I would know I was not crazy. The next day, she did. Mom took me into the video room with Mrs. Parrish watching us from the doorway. I expected the red light. I expected the carpet. I expected the thing, whatever it had been. But the room was empty. No red glow, no strange shadows, no monster. There was only an empty television sitting against the wall. Mrs. Parrish told me I had fallen asleep and had a bad dream. But I did not remember falling asleep. There's a monster, I kept saying. My mother bent down in front of me and took my hands. Her fingers squeezed mine. There isn't a monster, she said softly. Some things are not meant for you. Do you understand me, Freda? But I saw. What did you see? She asked. Her tone changed when she said that. It became hard. Tell me what you saw, sweetie. I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to remember. But it was like pushing against a wall inside my own mind. I knew something had been there. I knew I had felt fear so deep it had swallowed every other thought. But the image itself was gone. I saw a monster, I whispered. No, you didn't. Mom's eyes were sharp now. Say it with me, okay? You had a nightmare, just like Mrs. Parrish said. It was all in your head. Her fingers squeezed mine too tightly. I took a shaky breath and nodded. I had a nightmare, I whispered into her jacket when she pulled me close. I did not believe her, but I did not fully believe myself either. Whatever I had seen had already begun to fade, the way dreams fade when you wake up and try to explain them. I remembered pieces that made no sense. A feeling of nausea. A sense of something huge and wrong. A fear so powerful that it left me with only one thought. I had seen something that should not exist. For weeks afterward, I felt watched. It followed me everywhere. In class. At home. In the bathroom mirror. I would look at my classmates and feel something cold move under my skin. Sometimes I caught myself staring at my brothers, wondering what they had seen in that room and why they did not remember it. At night, I dreamed of the video room. In my dreams, a television filled with static stood over rows of dark shapes. My classmates sat in front of it, but when they turned to look at me, they had no faces, no eyes, no mouths, no names, just blank shadows wearing the shape of children I knew. I became quiet after that, more quiet than before. I avoided my friends. I avoided my brothers. Whenever I was near them, I felt that same suffocating darkness press around me. It felt like dozens of invisible eyes were boring into my back, watching everything I did and choking the words before they reached my mouth. Eventually, as I got older, the feeling faded, or I thought it did. 9 years later, it came back. This time, it came back around my boyfriend's family. Not his parents at first. I had not met them yet. His siblings. His name was Spencer Delaney, and I thought he was far too good for me when we met. I met him at a college party, of all places. He was the kind of person who could sit in the corner petting the house cat like a quiet introvert, and then 10 minutes later jump around to music until he was drunk and laughing. I met him while I was on my way to the bathroom to throw up. Somehow, we ended up talking about potted plants and tragic romance. Through my dizzy, half-drunk vision, Spencer looked like a movie star that night. He had a bright smile, messy curls, and sunglasses pushed up on his head, even though we were indoors. Our first conversation started because I pointed out that he had spilled his drink. He looked down at the stain on his collar and said, very seriously, his name is Ben. I was drunk enough to find that hilarious. The strange part was that I had barely drunk anything that night. I had tried to stay mostly sober. But before long, the room was spinning. The lights were too bright. The bodies around me looked shiny with sweat, moving under colors I could not name. Then I threw up in front of Spencer. Not a cute little cough. Not a graceful excuse me moment. I mean, I ended up kneeling on the bathroom floor, bringing up what felt like my stomach lining, making sounds no human being should ever make. I hoped I would never see him again. The next morning, I ran into him at a coffee shop. There were dozens of cafes across campus, yet there he was, standing in line while I tried to buy coffee and pretend I had not embarrassed myself in front of him the night before. When he recognized me, I wanted the floor to open and swallow me. But Spencer was kind. He did not make fun of me. He smiled, though not quite as brightly as he had at the party. Without the drunken glow, his teeth were slightly crooked, and he looked like he was fighting a terrible hangover under his hoodie. Somehow, that made him more real, more charming. I wanted to know him. 3 months later, he wanted me to meet his family. That was where things began to go wrong. Spencer's family, or at least his siblings, were insane. I know that sounds dramatic, but I do not know how else to say it. I understand being protective of a younger brother. Families can be strange. Siblings can be nosy. But Jasper and Luna Delaney took it far beyond normal. They stalked us. At first, I thought it was cute in a weird way. Luna would appear at a movie theater while Spencer and I were on a date and say, "Oh, what a coincidence. I was going to see this movie too." Then it kept happening. I would be at the grocery store, and I would see a familiar bouncing ponytail behind me. Luna would be hiding behind a book, as if a book made her invisible. It did not matter if I was with Spencer or alone. Somehow, the Delaney siblings would find me. One weekend, I went to a baseball game with my dad. Jasper Delaney was sitting 2 rows behind me. I knew it was him because of his bushy dark hair and the way he kept pretending not to look at me. At first, it felt almost funny, like a game, spot the spy. But then they got better at it. That was when I started feeling paranoid. My family is kind of weird. Spencer had warned me on our second date. He said it with a joking smile at first, but then his face changed. He looked serious, almost afraid. I laughed and said, "Aren't all families weird?" He did not laugh. He just drank his wine and changed the subject. During that same date, I kept noticing his eyes drift around the restaurant. At first, I thought he was daydreaming, because Spencer often did that. But he was not daydreaming. He was looking for someone. When I ordered dessert, I saw Jasper across the room. He was sitting with a group of people who clearly did not know him, pretending to be part of their conversation. He was wearing a black hoodie and jeans in a restaurant full of suits and glittering dresses. Spencer excused himself and went over to him. They spoke quietly. Jasper did not smile. He did not look angry either. His face was unreadable. Then he nodded once and left. When Spencer came back, his smile was in place again, but it looked forced. His hand gripped the edge of the table so tightly that his knuckles were white. "Please excuse my brother," he said. "I have overprotective siblings." That was all he ever said. They're kind of weird. But they were more than weird. Dating Spencer sometimes felt like dating all 3 Delaney siblings. We had no privacy. Whenever I thought we were finally alone, one of them would appear nearby, watching badly from behind a tree, a shelf, a menu, or a group of strangers. So when Spencer told me it was time to meet his parents, I was nervous. If his siblings were that obsessed with his dating life, what were his parents going to be like? Still, the plans were already made. Backing out would have been rude, and honestly, I cared about Spencer too much to refuse. We walked back from class that evening, and he went over the rules again. There were a lot of rules. So, he said, holding my hand tightly. "Let's go through it one more time." "Right," I said. "Don't look your dad in the eye." "Yep, he hates eye contact." "Greet everyone when we arrive. Smile, but not too much." "Correct. Take off my shoes and put them in the closet because your mom hates dirt." "You got it." I nearly tripped in the heels I had stupidly chosen to wear. Spencer nudged me playfully and laughed. He was so sweet in that moment that it made my chest ache. How could someone like him be related to people like Luna and Jasper? Luna was beautiful, but her smile always looked twisted, like there was something hidden behind it. She reminded me of a snake pretending to be a girl. Jasper at least tried to be friendly, but his grins were too wide, and his eyes were too empty. His teeth looked too sharp when he smiled. He looked at Spencer with a strange focus, like his whole world existed only because his brother did. The Delaney house was exactly what I expected, and somehow worse. It was a large Victorian home surrounded by a white picket fence. The garden was perfect, too perfect. Every flower looked carefully placed. There was a pool in the back with a cover still on it, and a jacuzzi on a wooden platform. The deck chairs looked brand new, like nobody had ever sat in them. The whole place looked clean and untouched. That bothered me. It looked less like a family home and more like a display house built to show what family was supposed to look like. At the front door, I noticed a price tag still hanging from a rose bush near the entrance. I almost asked what his parents did for work, but Spencer knocked twice and shouted, "Hey, Mom, I'm home." Then he opened the door and led me inside. The hallway was bright and warm. A home sweet home. Matt sat by the door, looking brand new. Baby pictures lined the walls. I assumed they were Spencer and his siblings. Spencer. A woman's voice called from down the hallway. "Sweetie, is that you?" "It's me, Ma." Spencer shouted back. Then he turned to me and whispered, "Mom's a little deaf, so you'll have to speak up. Her hearing gets better when she's drunk, though, so be ready when the games start." "Games?" I asked, slipping out of my heels. "Monopoly after dinner," he said. "Whatever you do not take the dog piece. Luna will murder you." I smiled weakly and looked around. The house was a mix of modern and old. A glass staircase stood nearby, looking beautiful and terrifying. My eyes went back to the baby pictures. "Ah," I said, pointing. "Are those you? And them?" Spencer laughed. "Be nice. And yeah, Mom took pictures of everything when we were kids. I'm pretty sure she documented my whole life." I smiled, but something about the pictures caught my attention. In one photo, a little girl waved at the camera. She had bright red hair. Luna was brunette. In another, 2 little boys played in the Delaney garden. They were blonde. Spencer and Jasper both had dark brown curls. I told myself people dye their hair. Childhood hair changes. It did not mean anything. Spencer opened the closet beside the door so I could put away my shoes. I stepped closer and bent down to place them inside. Then I stopped. There were too many shoes, too many jackets, too many bags. Backpacks, wallets, and phones sat piled inside a small blue basket. The closet was packed with things that did not belong to one family of 5. My fingers tightened around my heels. Then I saw red-brown stains on the bottom of a worn pair of Converse. Old stains, blurred and stuck around the edges of the sole. My breath caught. Something above me swayed gently. I looked up. ID tags. College ID tags. 5 of them hanging from the closet ceiling. I reached up before I could stop myself and pulled one down. It was a UCLA ID. It belonged to a student named Zach Valdez. In the photo, he was not smiling. He was rolling his eyes at the camera with a real expression on his face. A real expression. Not like Spencer's sweet smile. Not like the perfect, practiced smiles of the Delaney siblings. Zach Valdez had Spencer's face. The truth hit me so hard that I almost fell backward. I turned, ready to run. I was already thinking of how to get around Spencer and reach the front door, but he was standing right behind me. A gun was in his hands. It was pointed directly between my eyes. His aim was perfectly steady. In that moment, I realized I had been dating a wolf in sheep's clothing. Spencer was not the soft, harmless one in the Delaney family. He was one of them. Maybe he had always been one of them. I raised my hand slowly. He followed the movement with the gun, his eyes fixed on me. For the first time, I felt like he was truly looking at me, not smiling at me, not charming me. Looking, studying, the warmth was gone from his face. Now that I knew what to look for, I could see the blankness. There were no little twitches, no natural expressions, no real fear or sadness or guilt. Even his smile, the one I had loved, had been practiced, just like Jasper's. "Friedacaster," Spencer said. His voice was flat, almost robotic. I did not see him pull the trigger. Something sharp struck the back of my neck. A sting, like a needle. My knees weakened. "You're going to tell us exactly what you know about." He said a word then, but I could not understand it. It slid away from my mind the second I heard it. The shape of it felt sharp and wrong, like a razor pressed against the inside of my skull. I turned my head as much as I could. Jasper stood in the hallway, half hidden by light and shadow. He had a pea shooter curled between his lips and another gun pointed at me. Then I saw Luna's ponytail near the edge of my vision. A third gun was aimed at my head. The three siblings spoke together then. One voice, one rhythm. Their words matched perfectly, as if they shared the same mouth. They repeated the question, and when they reached the last word, it changed. It bent in the air. My brain refused to hold it. As I dropped to my knees, I was not thinking about the guns. I was not thinking about the ID tags or the stolen names or the boy named Zach Valdez who had once had Spencer's face. I was thinking about the Red Room. I was 8 years old again, standing in a dark school hallway while red lights spilled across the floor. I heard my mother's voice. "Some things aren't for you, Freda. Do you understand me?" My body went numb. I remember being dragged deeper into the Delaney house. I remember the three siblings moving around me like trained soldiers. I remember two adult voices joining them from somewhere ahead. They forced me onto a leather sofa. A television mounted on the wall flickered on. Static filled the screen. Then, black and white words appeared. The Delaney family. In, hunt down and delete every score, underscore, underscore. The last word would not settle in my head. Spencer knelt in front of me and repeated the phrase at the same time a woman appeared on the screen. She had a bright, hypnotizing smile and stood with her arms at her sides. She looked like someone from an old how-to-video from the 70s, with cheerful music and dead eyes. Maybe it was the drugs, but it looked like she was bleeding out of the static. Her body seemed to take shape in the room itself. The Delaney family followed her orders. Mrs. Delaney stood over me in a yellow 50s-style dress with matching slippers. Her smile was too wide. Mr. Delaney stayed back in the shadows. The three children stood around me, though I knew by then that they were not really children. Not in the way I understood children. Spencer held my arm. Luna's fingers wrapped around my neck, forcing my head forward. Jasper held my eyes open. I finally understood the blankness in Jasper's eyes. People say eyes are the windows to the soul. Jasper Delaney had a deep, empty hole where his soul should have been. The television hissed. The woman on the screen smiled. And finally, I heard the word. Somehow, it was familiar. Somehow, it felt like home. You're going to tell us exactly what you know about Spo. So yes, I guess you could say my boyfriend's family was weird. Story 5. I grew up in a small town in the far south of Italy, hidden among the mountains like a place the rest of the world had forgotten. It was the kind of town where every street looked almost the same, where narrow stone alleys twisted between old houses, and where the air always felt too warm and too wet. In the summer, the heat would sit on your skin like a heavy blanket. Even at night, when the sky turned black and the mountain winds should have cooled everything down, the air still felt humid and close. Our town was beautiful in the way old places can be beautiful, but it was also suffocating. Everyone knew everyone. Every family had a history. Every house had a story. People spoke softly about old sins, old miracles, and old curses. Religion was not just something people believed in there. It was part of daily life, part of the walls, part of the food, part of the way people spoke and thought. My family was deeply religious. Faith shaped everything we did. We said grace before every meal, even if the meal was small and everyone was tired. We went to church every Sunday, without fail. We crossed ourselves when passing certain shrines. My mother kept small statues of saints around the house. My father believed that the church was the answer to almost every problem. If someone was sick, we prayed. If someone was struggling, we prayed. If something frightening happened, we prayed harder. When I was young, I did not question it much. Children accept the world they are born into because they do not know anything else. But by the time I was 13, I had started thinking differently from the rest of my family. I was curious about science, medicine, and the way the human mind worked. I liked facts more than traditions. I liked answers that could be tested, seen, and understood. I still respected my family, but I no longer believed everything they believed. That caused tension in our house. My parents did not like when I asked questions. They saw doubt as danger. To them, questioning faith was the first step toward losing your soul. I did not want to hurt them, but I could not pretend to believe things just because they did. The older I got, the more I felt like a stranger in my own home. The only person in my family I truly felt close to was my little brother, Leonardo. We called him Leo. Leo was 10 years old, 3 years younger than me, and he was the kind of child everyone loved. He had bright eyes, messy hair, and a smile that could soften almost anyone. He was full of energy. He loved running, climbing, playing football in the street, and asking questions about everything. He was also interested in science, like I was. We used to spend hours talking about animals, planets, the human body, machines, and anything else we could learn from books. In a family where I often felt alone, Leo made me feel understood. He was not just my brother. He was my closest friend. We shared a small world that belonged only to us. We played sports together in the narrow streets behind our house. We made up games in the courtyard. We would lie on the floor and draw strange inventions on scrap paper, pretending one day we would build something amazing and leave our small town behind. Sometimes after dinner, when our parents were talking with relatives or neighbors, Leo would sneak into my room with a book and ask me to explain something he did not understand. He trusted me. That is why it hurt so much when I started to lose him. It began slowly. At first, my parents thought Leo was just tired or going through a phase. He stopped playing outside as much. He did not run to meet his friends after school. He spent more time alone in corners of the house, sitting quietly and staring at nothing. When I asked him if he wanted to play football, he would shake his head and say he did not feel like it. That was not like him. Then his schoolwork started getting worse. Leo had always been a good student, especially in science and math. But suddenly, his notebooks became messy. His teachers said he seemed distracted. He forgot homework. He stopped raising his hand in class. He gave strange answers to simple questions. At home, his speech changed too. Sometimes he would begin a sentence and then stop halfway through, like he had forgotten what he wanted to say. Other times he would speak in a way that made no sense, jumping from one thought to another without connection. He mumbled to himself when he thought no one was listening. At night, I sometimes heard him whispering in the room we shared for part of our childhood, though by then he had his own bed in another room. My mother became worried. My father tried to hide his concern behind anger. He told Leo to stop acting strange. He said boys should not behave like that. He said Leo needed discipline, prayer, and more time in church. I thought Leo needed a doctor, but I was only 13. No one listened to me. The first truly disturbing moment happened on an ordinary afternoon. I was sitting in the house, reading quietly. The air was heavy and the windows were open, but there was no breeze. I remember the sound of dishes in the kitchen and the faint noise of someone talking outside in the alley. Leo came into the room holding a piece of paper. He stood in front of me without speaking. I looked up from my book and smiled at him. "What is it?" I asked. He did not answer right away. He just handed me the paper. It was a drawing. At first, I did not understand what I was looking at. Leo had always liked drawing, but this was different from the things he usually made. This was not a machine, an animal, or a football player. It was a figure, a dark figure. It had 3 heads. Each head had a wide mouth, and blood was dripping from all 3 of them. The body was tall and thin, almost like a shadow stretched into the shape of a person. Its arms were too long. Its fingers looked like claws. The eyes were empty black circles, but somehow they looked alive. I stared at the drawing, feeling a cold pressure in my chest. "Leo," I said carefully, "what is this?" He looked toward the corner of the room. Then he pointed at a chair. "His name is Mr. Z," he said. "He comes to visit me often." I followed his finger and looked at the chair. It was empty. Leo kept staring at it. "He is sitting there right now," he said softly. "He is staring at us." I did not know what to say. I looked at the chair again, then back at my brother. His face was pale. His eyes were wide, but he did not look like he was joking. Leo was not trying to scare me. He was already scared. I put the drawing down beside me. "Leo," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "who is Mr. Z?" He swallowed. The room seemed to grow quieter. "I don't really know," he said. "He does not tell me everything." "What does he want?" Leo's lower lip began to tremble. "He keeps saying he wants to kill Mom," he whispered. "And Dad." He looked at me then. "And you." Those words made my blood feel cold. For a moment, I could not move. I wanted to tell him it was just his imagination. I wanted to tell him there was no one in the chair. I wanted to grab his hand and lead him outside into the sun and make all of this disappear. But before I could say anything, I heard a sound behind me. My parents had entered the room while we were talking. I had not even noticed them. My mother was staring at Leo with horror on her face. My father stood behind her, stiff and silent. For one terrible second, no one moved. Then, my mother screamed. "The devil has possessed you." She burst into tears. My father crossed himself. My mother began praying loudly. Leo covered his ears and cried. I tried to stand between them and him, but everything happened too fast. Other family members heard the screaming and came in. Soon the room felt crowded, hot, and full of fear. Everyone stared at Leo like he was no longer a child, like he was something dangerous. I hated that. He was my little brother. He was scared. He needed help. But in that house, fear always turned into religion. Questions became accusations. Illness became sin. A frightened child became a body for the devil. That night, no one slept well. I heard my parents whispering in the kitchen. My mother cried for hours. My father spoke in a low voice with my uncle. I heard words like demon, curse, possession, punishment, and prayer. The next day, my family decided to call a healer. Some people in our area called women like her healers. Others called them sorceresses. They were not doctors, and they were not exactly priests either. They were people who dealt with things the church did not always speak of openly, but that many families still believed in. Evil eye, spirits, curses, demons, old sicknesses of the soul. I was skeptical. Even at 13, I did not believe calling a sorceress was the answer. I wanted Leo to see a doctor. I wanted someone trained in medicine to speak to him. I wanted my parents to ask what was happening in his mind instead of assuming something had entered his body. But then I thought about the drawing. I thought about his voice when he said Mr. Z wanted to kill us. I thought about the way he stared at the empty chair. And for the first time, my confidence in science shook a little. What if a normal doctor could not explain this? What if Leo really was seeing something? The healer arrived the following night. She was an older woman, dressed in black, with deep lines on her face and rings on several fingers. She carried a small bag full of objects I could not see clearly. There were candles, herbs, strings, bottles of oil, and small religious items. She spoke quietly with my parents in the hallway, while Leo sat in his room, pale and silent. I remember standing near the stairs, listening. The woman asked many questions. When did it begin? What did Leo see? What did the figure call itself? Did it speak? Did it threaten the family? When my mother showed her the drawing, the healer's face changed. She crossed herself. Senor Z, she said. Mr. Z, the way she said the name made my stomach tighten. She told my parents that this was not a simple spirit. She said it was a powerful, infernal demon, something old and clever. She said it had attached itself to Leonardo and needed to be driven out before it destroyed the whole family. My mother cried harder. My father agreed to the ritual. I wanted to argue, but no one would have listened. That night, the house became something I will never forget. They took Leo into the largest bedroom and closed the door. The healer went in with my parents and a few relatives. Candles were lit. Prayers were spoken. I was told to stay downstairs and not interfere. But how could I sleep? How could anyone sleep during an exorcism inside their own home? I sat in my room listening. At first I heard praying. My mother's voice. My father's voice. The healer's voice, low and steady. Then Leo began crying. After a while, his crying turned into screams. I pressed my hands over my ears, but I could still hear him. He screamed for my mother. He screamed for me. He begged them to stop. At one point, the walls seemed to shake with his voice. I heard furniture scraping across the floor. I heard someone shout. I heard the healer chanting louder and louder. I heard my mother sobbing between prayers. I wanted to run upstairs. I wanted to push open the door and take Leo away from them. But I stayed frozen. That is one of the things I still hate myself for. I was scared of my family. I was scared of the healer. I was scared of Mr. Z. I was scared that if I opened that door, I would see something I could never forget. So I did nothing. Then, suddenly, the noise stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the screaming. It was too complete. For a moment, I thought maybe the ritual was over. Maybe Leo had calmed down. Maybe everything would be okay. Then I heard crying upstairs. Not Leo's crying, my mother's. I ran. I climbed the stairs so fast I almost tripped. When I reached the bedroom, the door was open. People were standing around the bed. My mother was on the floor, shaking and crying. My father's face was gray. The healer stood near the window, breathing hard, one hand against the wall. The room smelled like smoke, herbs, sweat, and something sour I could not identify. Leo was on the bed. He was not moving. His skin looked pale, almost waxy. His mouth was slightly open. His eyes were closed. I knew before anyone said it. My little brother was dead. The healer told my family that the demon had been driven out. She said the ritual had worked, but Leo's body had been too weak to survive the fight. My mother later told me that just before I entered the room. Smoke had risen from Leo's lifeless body and drifted out through the open window. To her, that meant Mr. Z had left him. It meant the entity was gone. She said it like that was supposed to comfort me. It did not. All I could think was that my brother was dead. A few days later, we buried him. The funeral was crowded with relatives I had not seen in years. People came from nearby towns, from distant branches of the family, from old friendships and old church connections. They hugged my parents. They whispered prayers. They told me Leonardo was with God now. They told me he was free from suffering. They told me not to be angry. But I was angry. I was angry at everyone. At my parents. At the healer. At the church. At the town. At Mr. Z, if Mr. Z was real. At myself most of all. After Leo died, something inside me broke.